another Latitude live stream. I'm joined again by English is my first language, but don't worry. I'm joined again by Nick Welton, our CEO and founder. Welcome, Nick.
Hey guys.
We're excited today to talk about Voyage. And, um, one of the things that's fascinating to us is it feels like we talk about Voyage all the time, and maybe it's just internal. But every time that we do a live stream or we talk in Discord or Reddit, we often get questions about what is Voyage, and we figured that we should hit that hard. So we'll get into that today. Before we do, I do have a quick Murder Shed tool review to reveal here, and Nick, you'll probably appreciate this one because, all right. So here's the scenario. I've been doing more walking lately, and many of us at the company, Nick included, have been really using a lot of AI. And so, like when I'm walking, I'm actually working a lot of time, kind of triggering different AI agents to go and do some stuff, and it's a hassle. Simultaneously, I have this concern that when I walk, it's often in areas where people have dogs off of leashes, and that has created some safety issues at times. So I have crafted my own um, combination walking stick slash AI phone device. It's probably hard to tell. So I went and cut down an alder tree from my property. I attached a phone mount to the top, and then on the on the other end, I weighted it. This is like some like ankle weights for exercise, um, as a counterbalance because the phone is kind of heavy. So now I can kind of just like keep the phone at perfect eye level. So I found I was my like the back of my neck was hurting from looking down at my phone too much while I was walking. Um, so now I have perfect ergonomics, and I can also keep people's dogs at bay. That because most dog like a lot of dog owners, I swear like only 10% of dog owners are good with their dogs. Like they're always like off leash, running up. I actually had a dog bite me recently, so I have to have a walking staff uh, for keeping the wild beasts at bay. So anyway, there's my new tool. But Nick, I thought you'd appreciate that because I'm sure you're doing a fair amount of walking and AI agent queuing, and I don't know if you've had I don't know if you've had the neck issue thing that I've had, but that's become a thing for me.
I feel like I just watched a real life Minecraft like crafting review. Like, guys, if you put the stick and the iPhone holder and the that's great. No, I haven't had that necessarily. I've had my own weird issues, but it is definitely I definitely love the like walking. Like the other day I just took out Claude and was doing like learning on AI research papers and was like, okay, I think it is this what this paper means, and the AI would be like, well, actually this is right, but not that. And like we just had a long like hour and a half conversation helped me like understand the architecture of a paper a lot better, and that was really fun.
Yeah, well, with both Claude and ChatGPT, there's a feature where it'll read back the prompt. I find that a lot of them have a voice feature where you can like talk and it just kind of responds, but I feel like the model isn't as good. So
Yeah.
what I typically do is I'll do dictation. A lot of us here at Latitude use a tool called Whisper Flow, and so I'll dictate my question or my kind of commentary, and then just go through the regular model, and then once it's done, you can have it read it back, and that's pretty good too. So it's like you're kind of building your own podcast while you're walking, and that's a great way to to kind of process some of that stuff like you're doing too, Nick, which is
Yeah, totally.
which is good. But yeah, I'm a bit of a weirdo now. I walk around with my big old stick on the beach, and I'm hard to miss. There was somebody the other day that saw me in the morning, and I did another kind of walk in the evening, and they thought I had walked like 50 miles and was just returning. They're like, "Oh my gosh, you really go?" I was like, "No, no, no. It was 2 sessions. All good." So cool. Well, let's get into it. Let's talk about Voyage. Let's talk about what even is this thing. And maybe let's just start with the question on its surface, Nick, and just kind of take it like we can start with the elevator pitch version. Essentially, if someone, a community member came up to you and just said, "What is Voyage?" How would you answer that?
Yeah, so Voyage is us building what the initial premise. I think one of the best ways to describe the community is a lot of people come into AI Dungeon expecting a certain thing, and then they find something different because we always wanted to enable people to be able to jump into any world, be anyone, and go on these like infinite adventures in a world. And AI Dungeon was our first stepping stone towards that, where now you could type any action, have any story come out of that. But with AI Dungeon, we saw, several different things that prevented us from getting all the way of where we wanted to go. So in AI Dungeon, um, you have creative freedom to do anything, which is cool for some use cases, but you don't actually get the satisfying feeling of like defeating a really hard boss or like enchanting this really cool weapon that now is going to make you more powerful, or completing this really hard quest where you almost died and you somehow managed to scrape through. So there's that aspect of like having a really hard, compelling challenge that you complete and feel really, proud of yourself. So that's one thing that Voyage gives, is it goes from interactive fiction to like a full-fledged RPG game world where you can be anyone, do anything, create any world, but have challenge and struggle and progress and get stronger in a way that's really, really fun. Another piece where Voyage is different is AI Dungeon, you've got story cards and you've got story, and that's it, right? And it's really fun creating a story with AI, but you don't really feel like there's a world underneath as much. Whereas Voyage, there's a story layer that you're reading, but underneath that is actually an entire world. There's regions and locations and characters, and those characters are taking their own actions independent of you. So you get this feeling of Voyage that I'm not just having someone write a story for me. I'm getting experience where I feel like I'm in an actual world with characters who have their own goals and their own like fears and challenges, and I get to be one participant in that and shape how this world evolves. And one thing that's cool about that is it makes it feel like things matter a lot more. Because in AI Dungeon, you can just like edit and retry and like, say whatever happens. But in Voyage, like if your companion dies, they might just be dead and you might never be able to bring them back. And so things feel like they matter much more in a way that's really compelling. So that's another piece is Voyage has a structured world that you're exploring. It's not just a story, it's a full world with living and breathing characters. Another is that Voyage will become much more visual than AI Dungeon. So in AI Dungeon, we have images, but they're not. It's harder to make images as work because you need character consistency. That's something we've often heard from players. Is like one of the challenges is like you really want characters that are consistent. Otherwise, it doesn't feel as compelling if like your character looks one way in one scene but completely different in another scene, right? And actually, to do that, what you need is you need to track character concepts, you need to track location concepts, and you need to track who's in what scene. And Voyage does this all really well, and then has images for every character, and will for every location, so that you can build an emotional connection. You can see your character. You can feel like, oh, that's me, or that's this companion that I'm connecting with. And it has a map that you can see where you are and explore the world. So Voyage becomes much more immersive. It's not just text, it's voice and images and a map that you can explore. And so you're able to feel like Voyage is not just a story, but it feels more like a world. And the final way that Voyage is really different is multiplayer. So AI Dungeon has multiplayer, but it's hard to make multiplayer work because you all, in a creative story thing, you all might want to take in different directions. But when you have challenge and when you have quests and objectives, now you can, just like in D&D, have a party that goes on an adventure together and has a shared sense of purpose and are solving the same challenge together, right? Like you have to creatively problem solve. How are we going to get out of this situation, right? So me and Devin played a game when we first did multiplayer where we spawned in this like goblin cook's kitchen, and we're all like in these cages and about to get cooked by these goblins, and we had to figure out how to escape. And like we had this crazy scene where we like we threw a goblin in the pod and we somehow managed to escape and we almost died and then like Devin's character got poisoned. It was either you or Parker's
It was
character.
Parker's character,
Yeah,
yeah.
Parker's character got poisoned with this like corruption magic and we were like, "No, we have to save him." We went on this whole quest to save him from dying and it was super super fun. Um and so those are all some of the ways that Voyage is really different. Um and uh it really is the culmination of this some package of experience of you're not just like doing an interactive story, but you are being able to be a character in a rich RPG world where your choices matter, where you can connect with characters that have their own like history and worries and fears and everything, and and feel like you can immerse yourself in a world in a new way that's never been possible before.
Well, I have to say that that is the uh, longest elevator ride I've been on. Um, um, so why don't we break it down to some of the kind of more fundamental components as well? You know, because I think we're also getting some questions about like, let's even just describe like define what Voyage is. Is it, you know, is it like is it text based? Is it 3D? Is it 2D? Like let's even just kind of put it into a genre or a category. Like how like
Yeah.
what even is it? Like let's kind of start with that.
Yeah. So let me just first start at the history of games and of AI games and place Voyage within that journey. So, um, games started very simple. You know, you had very basic visual games like Pong, and you had very basic like text adventure games. Things like Zork, right, where you type an action and something happens. And over the history of games, they progressed and they got better. They got deeper stories, where you get something like Baldur's Gate 3 now. They got deeper visuals. They got worlds that feel more complex and more alive. Um, and those steadily progressed over time, right? You know, we went from text adventures to like games where you had very simple visuals in a world you're exploring to, you know, 3D, you know, expansive worlds. And AI games are and will follow a similar journey. And that's one of our visions as a company is to bring the future of AI games forward so that we can experience types of experience that have never been possible before. So AI Dungeon was this first step. It was the first step in AI games where you have these like text adventures. And now Voyage is the next step on that. Um, so it's not at the, you know, 2D, 3D level. We're not in the 2000s of games yet. We're still in the 80s and 90s. But Voyage goes from simple text adventures to now there's text, images, audio, and a rich structured world with game mechanics. So it'll feel like, you know, in some ways it'll feel like AI Dungeon where you can type an action and have a story come out of it, but it will feel much more immersive and rich where you can see the characters' images, you can hear their voices, you can see the, you know, the where you're at and maybe the best way to describe is it feels like what you'd have if you were at the tabletop playing D&D or um another tabletop where you have this like rich immersive story and you have visuals here and there to help set the scene, and mechanics that make it feel alive.
Yeah, and so like one thing that could be interesting to talk about a little bit is sort of the maybe the mechanical gap between AI Dungeon and Voyage because and um I'll give my perspective and then you can kind of give yours too, Nick, because I think one of the things that people often feel a disconnect with on AI Dungeon is they come in expecting more of a role play experience, and AI Dungeon sometimes feels more like a collaborative writing experience because it doesn't have some of the mechanics and the constraints that a traditional RPG would have. And a lot of that was due to the technology that was available when you first built AI Dungeon. One of like what AI is great at is sort of like this anything is possible divergent sort of experience. But what it struggles with is more of the more constrained deterministic things like you have this much health, you
Yeah.
succeeded or you failed, you have this many people in your party, you can do this, you can't do that. And those things are actually surprisingly hard for AI to handle. And is one of the reasons why, you know, AI Dungeon didn't in many cases didn't feel like the game experience that people expected. But now with Voyage, we're able to do some of that. So I guess I'd be curious to hear from you, Nick, like some of the kind of more mechanical difference between AI Dungeon and
Yeah.
Voyage, and like how the progression of technology has enabled us to make that jump.
Yeah. So I'll start with the goals and the why, because I think when you understand the why, the how makes more sense. So at the end of the day, I think what we all want is to experience really compelling, moving stories where we get to be part of the story. And that's one of the things that's different about what we're doing. We're not trying to make a single, movie that everyone watches the same story. We're trying to make an experience where you get to be in the center of the story. And that's really cool and really exciting. And so the question then is like, how do we make you feel like you're part of a really interesting, compelling story that's immersive, that sucks you in, that you feel like is going to be magical? And the thing that Voyage brings is it brings a bunch of mechanics and systems that make the stories have a couple things. One is much more like compelling stakes. So when a story has stakes and consequences, it feels like it matters more. So I had an adventure one time where I was playing Voyage and I was like trying to stop this like evil ritual from happening. And I had gathered a couple companions and this small band of like mercenary dwarves, and we're like tramping through the forest trying to stop the ritual that was going to take place that night. And we get to the ritual, and this like goblin shaman has this, whole army, and we're fighting these goblins. We're like, okay, we can take them, we can take them. And then suddenly this like horn bellows, and these two massive trolls come out, and like they take out one of my companions, they smash my health down, and I'm at this moment where it's like, oh crap, I have 4 health left. There's these trolls bearing down on me, like I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die, and we like ran away, and we like barely escaped and barely survived. But that story moved me so much more because I knew that like there was stakes. Like if I didn't be creative and manage to escape the situation, like I was gonna die, and this ritual was gonna take place, and it'd be like the end of the world. And so those stakes make the story feel so much more meaningful because things matter, right?
Well, it's funny
And
because like when we say consequences matter, that doesn't like it doesn't feel like a fun thing immediately,
yeah,
right? Like even as like we've talked about it, like um when we say that like your games have consequences, um I don't think you immediately map that to like this is a more fun experience. Like we've even kind of joked that like the tagline for Voyage should be something like if you play Voyage, there will be consequences. Um, but it's true that like as you like if there's a chance of failure, like your heart rate goes up, you feel more invested, you feel like you have to apply skill and technique and craft, you have to strategize and think about how to solve things. um, and it to your point, Nick, it makes the game more meaningful. It also makes like the character relationships that you develop both with the NPCs in the game as well as in multiplayer. Now it feels like you're going on this, you've overcome this hard, difficult thing together. And so now there's like this bond that's stronger than just like kind of like it's just different because your relationship has been tested through, like it's been like battle tested, right?
yeah,
And it encourages you to build skill and develop in ways that you wouldn't with sort of like an open interactive fiction where sure, like any sort of like challenge is something that you manufacture,
yeah,
and that just makes it different.
yeah. And related to that, someone asked, it sounds like the memory system will be a lot better. And that's one of the cool things is not only have we made a much better memory system with summarization and memories on Voyage, but also if you want to have these mechanics where you have discrete, a troll and a dwarf and, your character, now that means you're tracking a bunch of different NPC objects and you're tracking a bunch of locations. And it turns out that actually really helps ground the AI in remembering the world much, much better. So in AI Dungeon, if you visit a village and you leave for, 1,000 actions and come back, it's probably forgotten everything about that village, right? Or it's forgotten a lot about what's in that village. Whereas on Voyage, that village is tracked. It's a discrete object. The location, the characters there are tracked. And so when you come back, um, you can see those same characters in the same place, and the world feels like actually real, and it's not gonna like shift under your feet like a fever dream, right? Um, the other thing that I think is really interesting that mechanics and systems enable is this sense of like emergent storytelling. Um, so in AI Dungeon, there's a little bit of emergence in the storytelling in the way that the human interacts with the AI, and out of that interaction emerges more interesting stories. In Voyage, we take that like several steps farther, where now it's not just the human interact with an AI, but it's you interacting with your friends, interacting with NPCs who are also taking their own actions, independent from what the storyteller says. So you might have an NPC that has their own like backstory. Like I remember there was one pioneer who an experience where they had an NPC that had this like very particular like set of trauma and experience, and every time they met some like evil monster, they were like they wanted to release it, and they like would have these like big fights with the main character about this, and that was because the NPC like actually had these like their own unique perspective, and they were taking their own actions to try and make things happen. And so you have these like emergent systems that are interact with each other. Like another story that we've shared on a previous live stream is there's one where, you know, I drop into a tavern and there's these thugs that walk in and they like find the ship captain and they're like, we're gonna uh you're not up to date on your payments, and you need to pay us or it's gonna get bad. And the ship captain's like, oh no, like I can't do it. And the bartender goes to defend him and draws her sword. And it's like this clear setup for me to interact with. And I'm like, I'm just gonna leave. So I walk out of the tavern, I walk down the street, and in normal way a dungeon, it'd probably just keep telling the story centered around me, everything revolving around me. But in Voyage, because there's discrete characters, they're taking discrete actions. What actually happened was I walk down the street for 5 actions, I go to a baker, and suddenly these guards run past, and they're like, "There's been a murder at the Drunken Sailor Inn," and I'm like, "What the heck just happened?" And I go check the game state. What turned out is that bartender had gotten into a fight with the thugs. The bartender had killed the main thug, and that triggered a crime system where a major crime was recorded, and that caused the guards to like run to the tavern. So I ended up having this whole experience where I go follow, you know, the guards, and I tell them that I had seen this crime, and they were like, "Are you sure you saw what you saw?" Like they were friends with the thug that got killed, and they started pressuring me to change my story, and I got thrown in jail and tortured, and then like I managed to escape, and it was a whole plot that was just so interesting because I was like, this story all happened not centered around me. It wasn't because of what I did. It was because of what some other characters did, and it made the world feel alive in a way that I think is much harder to have happen in AI Dungeon.
Yeah, and like one thing that fascinates me personally with all of this is this idea of like emergent story. And we've talked a little bit on a previous stream about nonlinear storytelling, but I think it's worth calling up because one of the early hypotheses was that we would need to build these sort of story arcs into the Voyage engine to create these, you know, compelling stories. But where we landed on instead is that having rich information for worlds, but especially rich information for characters, as characters have different motivations and different skills and different abilities, and you allow them to interact in this kind of world simulation, great stories emerge. And how that really mirrors real life, right? Where I mean, each of us as individuals, we have different backgrounds, we have different skills, we have different motivations, and as we all come together and clash sometimes, or you know, align or whatever, the stories of our lives emerge, and really Voyage sort of emulates or mirrors that type of an experience. So the stories aren't predetermined, just like in a dungeon they're not predetermined, but there's more to like what you're describing. Like the world feels more real because all of the systems, the characters, the worlds, they're deeper, they're richer, and they have permanence, and they have kind of a life outside of the narrator, right? They can live and evolve on their own, just like a real world would. And that like, it's funny, like as we kind of break down the difference between like more of a static world versus a living world, those things matter. Those entities have to be able to evolve and change and move on their own. And I think we've learned that through this process of both developing AI Dungeon and now Voyage, how important it is for those entities to have great depth and the ability to evolve on their own. So maybe we could talk about maybe some of the more kind of specifics about like accessing Voyage and using Voyage. So I've seen some questions in the live stream around like, is Voyage going to be a separate app? Will Voyage have scripting from AI Dungeon? I think especially our current community, is very kind of interested in that evolution. So maybe we should talk about like, is Voyage going to be a separate app or is it going to be the same app?
Yeah, so our plan is to launch Voyage as a separate app. Because I think AI Dungeon, we want to make sure people can find AI Dungeon in the App Store, keep playing what they love, because I think AI Dungeon is awesome and has a lot of really cool things, and in some ways serves a different use case of creative interactive fiction than Voyage does. So we'll launch Voyage as a separate app. Long term, we do want you to be able to access, different types of experiences from one place. So Voyage will have AI Dungeon content in it too. So if you want to just be on the Voyage app and switch back and forth between Voyage or AI Dungeon content, you'll have that option as well. And but we're not going to change. We're not going to get rid of the AI Dungeon app or anything. And so you can keep that the same. And to this question on scripting, yeah, scripting is something we really want to do. AI Dungeon, we did scripting as, we did like a very quick version. It's been amazing to see how much value, people have created with it. We want to be even more thoughtful on scripting for Voyage because we think it's going to be really important, a really important element of like how people create and share and build value. And so we have triggers right now as sort of like a basic system, but scripting is one of our top things we'll be doing, if not for launch, then like very soon after the open beta launch.
Yeah, and it's probably worth calling out too just how fundamentally different a Voyage adventure is versus an AI Dungeon adventure. And because it may on the surface seem like scripting from AI Dungeon should move over directly into Voyage. And obviously we don't want to like talk about everything, Nick, but I wonder if you might want to just kind of comment on like just how different they are and why we may not be able to take scripting. Like if somebody built a script on AI Dungeon, is that going to port directly to Voyage, or is there going to have to be some?
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. I would answer. There's a question in the chat, and then I'll answer that question. So people did also ask about separate subscriptions. So the plan is to have one subscription that gives you access to both AI Dungeon and Voyage. So, on the AI Dungeon app, if you subscribe to one of the tiers, you can then download the Voyage app, log in with your account, your same AI Dungeon account, and get access to Voyage with that same subscription. Or on Voyage, you can subscribe and get access to both AI Dungeon and Voyage content. On scripting, on AI Dungeon, scenarios are a very different structure than worlds on Voyage. So if you're making a scenario, you define the prompt and maybe author's note and some instructions and the story cards and maybe some scripts. On Voyage, it's a very different creation structure. So you define regions and locations and characters and a bunch of different like ways different tasks and different systems work. And so because of that, they're not really compatible structures. They're just very, very different. And so we're not going to be able to migrate content directly. I wouldn't be surprised. We're going to try and make there be good creator tools. There may be creators who make tools that can sort of convert your AI Dungeon scenarios into Voyage worlds. And we'd love to see if people are successful with that. That sounds awesome. We probably won't do that just because we're really focused on making the core experience really good. But I think regardless, there will be ways that you can kind of bring over your ideas. If you have an idea of something you made on AI Dungeon to Voyage, and we're going to try and make that as easy as possible. Voyage worlds are more complex, but we also have some pretty cool creator tools, and we'll be improving those that I think will help make it easy for anyone to jump in and create without needing to know how to code or do more complex things.
Yeah, Nick, that was going to be my follow up with scripting is to talk a little bit about the difference in the creator experience because I think, um, given the depth of worlds, we've built different tooling for that, and I imagine many of our community members would be interested in understanding like what's the creator experience going to be compared to what it's like on AI Dungeon, and there's been some kind of concerns about the complexity and is it going to be a lot harder. So it'd be
Yeah.
helpful to kind of hear you talk about like where we're at now and where we think it's going and the creator
Yeah.
experience as part of this.
Where we're at right now is um, there's a very large like JSON structure for your world, and you can modify that directly if you want. But where we really think so where a lot of people spend their time right now is using some of our AI tools. So you can type a prompt and have it generate a whole world to start that you can iterate on. So like Devin did that where he was really interested in this like 18th century fishing village like nautical sea monster mystery, and so he just like created a prompt with a few sentences and the AI created an entire world for him to start off on. And then there's a tool right now called the wand where you can use it to make modifications on the world. This is our V1 of creator tools. We're gonna get them a lot better over time, and I think where it's really gonna get to is um, yeah, you might make a few modifications here and there, but most of creation I think is going to happen by chatting with AI. Just as you see people use AI tools to write code or to create a document, I think the most powerful way to let creators create really easily is going to be them expressing what they want and having the AI get really good at making that into reality. And so that's where we're really going to push on our creator tools is make as powerful of AI creation tools as we can. Um, the other thing I want to address is someone asked, like, is Voyage strictly going to be RPG grand adventure or is it going to allow a slice of life? Um, and one thing we tried really hard with Voyage is to make as genre agnostic of an experience as we could. So it does have some core ideas like you are a character in a world and you move around locations, you interact with other characters, right? But creators have a lot of power to change how that feels. So you could make, an epic fantasy RPG, or you could make a cozy slice of life, little like farming, social experience where you chat with your neighbors and you like go on little quests to like find a new vegetable, or maybe it's like a high school, like, you have to like make friends with the other students and solve challenges or just kind of hang out with your friends. So it really has a lot of flexibility to do any type of experience where you're a character in a world. Voyage should be able to support, and we'll continue to make those creator tools better and better.
Yeah, and um, Nick is too nice to say it this way, but when he talks about me being able to create a world, um, I just want to emphasize how very much not a great creator I am when it comes to creating, yeah, dungeon scenarios, and even I don't have the creative capabilities or the patience that most of our creator community have to build these rich worlds. And I was surprised by how easy and simple it was because I just had this basic concept that Nick described, this like 1800s Jules Verne kind of um, you know Treasure Island kind of themed adventure, and I gave it maybe like a 2 to 3 sentence prompt, and the world that came back through the AI was so rich. And like as I was looking through it, I was surprised by like um, the different details that it came up with, like because I just said like I want there to be a sea monster, and it came up with like there's a merchant guild that is working on finding alternative trade routes to get around the fact that the sea monster is blocking their trade. And there was a St. Mary's Maritime Parish, and it's a local church community, and they've been seeing increased attendance because they're praying for the safe return of the sailors and all this stuff. There's a village council. It's like there's all of these like different entities, and then there's characters within it that have these rich backstories, and all that started with just a simple prompt. So it's going to be very easy to create something that's rich and enjoyable within Voyage. So it's if anyone feels nervous about the experience, it will be different, but it's going to be much better, I think. Um, Very cool. Let's see. So Nick, another question I have would be around the, we've settled on doing still sort of like this text based game, and there's a lot of models coming out for images, video. There's even sort of like 3D kind of world models now, where you can kind of navigate in 3D space. Um, and we've seen some experiments of other apps kind of venturing into those areas, and even games that are trying to work with AI in those spaces. Why have we chosen not to like go all in on some of those things? Not that we won't at some point, but we've had a very specific focus in the short term, and I'm curious if you could talk about why, and how we kind of how we see visuals playing into Voyage kind of as a long-term vision.
Yeah. So I think the principle we talk a lot about internally, we call immersive story. So I think immersive story, I love to describe it as that feeling you imagine of like being a kid reading a book under your covers with a flashlight. That feeling of just like being so like hooked into a world that you can't bring yourself out of it. Um, and you can have immersive stories that are books. You can have them that are movies. Um, but I think for us, one of the things we really believe is that no matter where you're and how you're being part of that story, um, the thing that matters first and foremost is having a story that is meaningful and that matters. Because it's so easy. You see these Hollywood blockbusters who are like, they have flashy visual effects and they have, snazzy, trailers. But then when you watch it, the story is just kind of like, meh. Like, why would I care about this story? And so I think for us, it's really
Transformers.
important.
Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, that's
Big name
for why.
actors. Yeah, everything.
Exactly. And so I think it's so important to make sure we get the story right. And like that needs to come first, right? And then the visuals and the other, the voice and all of those things, they come around to support that story. The visuals make you feel like, oh, this character, oh, now I feel deeper connection because I can see them. Oh, I can hear them. And it lets you consume the story even better. So I think for us, we got to get the core of great story, and that's what we focused on for the most of Voyage's development. And then we added on more and more visuals, and we'll add more of that immersiveness over time.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's so important, is to start with the story and build the other things on top. Um, so that's definitely the direction we want to go. Um, let's see. Looking through to see other questions that we may have missed about Voyage. I've got one. When is it coming out?
So we don't have a specific date of the open beta, but we are looking to, what we've said is we're looking to launch it in the first half of this year. So sometime in the next 3 to 6 months, be keeping an eye, and we will hopefully be ready to share it with you in an open beta.
Yeah, and it might even be helpful just to kind of comment on some of the stuff that's left to do, because I think um, one thing that we've learned from AI Dungeon is there's a difference between getting sort of like the core experience built and then having it ready to let, I mean, hundreds of thousands of people play at once is a big deal. And so, like, it takes a lot of preparation. So, what do you see as some of like the big kind of milestones that are remaining between now and when we're ready to release?
Yeah. So most of the features are all in. What we're primarily focused on is bug fixing and polish and making sure we can scale, because we'd hate to launch it and then suddenly all the servers, break down because they can't handle the load, and then everyone's disappointed. So we're really trying to do the best we can to make sure we can handle the high traffic, that it's stable and you can just immerse yourself in experience without hitting a bunch of bugs. And the systems just work well with a refined, polished UI. And so that's why we have, a closed beta program where we're adding more people every few weeks, so that they can help us find where all these issues are and really refine the experience. We're really building like hand in hand with this early tester community, because we want to make sure that we're not just making something we think is cool. We want to make sure we're building something that all of the players will love. So um, we're extremely aware and paying a close attention to all the feedback from early testers, trying to make the best experience we can. And it's kind of fun. As a side note, we've been using AI to supercharge a lot of our development internally and be able to build faster. And so one of the things we're doing is using AI to analyze every single piece of feedback that we've been given on Discord or in the app. There's a way to deliver feedback too. And I'll have I did this just yesterday. I'll have AI make a comprehensive report, analyze 2,000 pieces of feedback, analyze all these Discord comments to really understand like where the main issues are and what people um, want us to improve. And so we're really obsessive about understanding where you all are going to find gaps and making sure we just make this the best experience that we can.
Yeah, that's exciting. Yeah, it's I think that's one thing that we're very fortunate to have such a strong community that we can get all this great feedback. I like imagine trying to develop something like this without the input from the community and without people being able to play test it and give feedback and tell us where it works and where it doesn't. And people who, I mean, we already have this great community of creators who understand the nuance of storytelling with AI and like how much like how many like profound kind of product changes do you think that we've made over the course of developing Voyage that would have that came directly from our community and playtesters, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot. I think I always, the way I think about building great products is I kind of try to make it 50% for me, like 50% what I know I would love. And then I'm really grounded in like what I'm excited for, what I think people will enjoy. But then 50% for, the community and what they find feedback in. I feel like balancing those two often ends up in the best product, because sometimes there's things I see that maybe people don't talk about, but then when they experience are like, wow, that's really cool. And then there's often also like lots of cool things that community members come up with that I never imagined. And when they tell me the idea or show me how they're using it, I'm like, wow, I didn't think of that. And now like we can use that to make the product better for everyone.
Yeah, yeah, it's true, and I think that you're a pretty unique person in this space. So I think you're 50%. You have a good taste. So I think we'll be okay.
I certainly have nerded out on my dream experience for a long time, and so I'm excited to see this like thing I want to play come to life.
Yeah, you.
And I'm really excited to see all the creations people will make on the platform, because I think we've made one world that's an example world, but I think the coolest things are going to come from all the creators. I'm a huge fan of there's a sci-fi series called The Expanse, and I just like love that world. And I saw one of the creators had made an Expanse world, and I got in, I created my like Martian soldier who's like investigating this virus on an asteroid, and I just like was so giddy with excitement. I told a bunch of my friends and my brother, and like I loved seeing that like the community made something that really delighted me. And I think that's what's going to happen is as a community, everyone's going to make so many cool things that will just make us all have so many fun worlds to explore.
Yeah, I agree. Well, cool. I'm trying to see if there's any other questions. If not, we can start wrapping up. Um, and like we really appreciate all the questions about Voyage. We hope that this has been a helpful live stream to answer some of those more specific questions, both kind of high level of what it is and where it's going, some of the more tactical questions. So, if you have any questions that we haven't answered, get those in the chat real quick before we end up kind of signing off here. that would be helpful. Um, yeah, the one other thing I'll say is, some people have asked, if there's anything that they can do to help as we get ready to launch. Um, so a couple of things that come to mind. Obviously, for people who are already um, beta testing AI Dungeon or even alpha testing AI Dungeon, helping us to keep AI Dungeon strong and giving us great feedback there helps, because the larger and the stronger our AI Dungeon community is, the better the Voyage launch is going to continue to be. We're also, um, a lot of the people that we're bringing into the closed beta for Voyage are the people who are the best testers in the AI Dungeon community. We're also inviting a lot of creators. So if you're creating content on AI Dungeon, that's a great way to be part of the closed beta on Voyage as well, because we're trying to um, the creator experience on Voyage is really important. So those are some really helpful ways. And then as we get closer to launch, we're going to start sharing screenshots. My guess is we're going to start doing live play streams on these live streams like we do with AI Dungeon. We're going to do that with Voyage. And so sharing with people that, friends, family, neighbors, whoever, share, kind of the exciting thing that's coming out will be helpful, because our goal is to really make this as successful of a launch as we can. And you all can help with that. Um, as you've seen, as we are able to grow AI Dungeon and eventually Voyage, that just helps us to redirect more resources back into making the product better, whether through better AI, better feature development. That'll just help us to accelerate what we can do with Voyage in the future. So any help that you can provide, that would be useful. We did get a couple more questions coming in. So might as well address some of those real quick before we sign off. Image generation. Will Voyage have image generation?
Yes, it will. Particularly for characters, for locations. It, you'll be able to have images that help you feel like these entities, these NPCs and places you go are real places in the world.
Yeah, agreed. Um, NSFW policy for Voyage.
Yeah, the NSFW policy for Voyage will be mostly the same. So I think for in-game, we're not planning on making any big changes. We may make some changes for published content. I think Voyage will have different types of content, and we'll see what the right approach is to do that, and obviously do that in feedback with the community.
Yeah, and one thing that we're learning is, like, we obviously rely on AI for a lot of the moderation, at least the first pass of moderation that we do on AI Dungeon. And Voyage worlds are just completely different. They're going to require a different system, but also just be evaluated differently. They just play differently, so there could be some changes there on the publishing side.
Yeah.
Let's see. Music. People are asking some questions about music, like if we're using generated music, if we're using a music database. What is the music experience like in Voyage?
Yeah, so we thought a lot about this, and at least for now, the approach we want to take is, I think, characters and locations really need to be different for every world. But I think there's a lot of ways that music, if you have a good library of music, can extend to many different experiences. So we actually have a composer that is making music specifically for Voyage to really capture the feel. So he's fairly well known. He did the music for the Diablo games. His name's Matt Ullman, and so we're really excited that he joined us and has been making some really really great music that just helps you feel immersed in the experience.
Awesome. Um, let's see. Will the price of subscriptions increase when Voyage launches?
We don't plan to increase subscription prices with Voyage. Uh, so we have our 15, 30, and $50 tiers. And mostly what we're just going to have to figure out is how much of what features we can give at different tiers. We want to have everyone be able to play at least some for free and be able to at least try it out. We'll have to figure out what models and how much people can use at different levels.
Yeah, and people may or may not remember. We recently deprecated our adventure tier, which was formerly kind of a $10 per month tier. Part of that was because of Voyage. We were finding that there wouldn't be as much that we'd be able to give out for that tier. And even on AI Dungeon, it's kind of been in a little bit of it was already in a weird gap between the free tier and the champion tier. So that was another motivation there. Cool. I think we hit. Someone else asked about text to speech. Do you want to talk? Is there anything that you want to share about text to speech in AI Dungeon
Yeah, we will have text to speech
or Voyage? Sorry.
as a feature. Um, I think text to speech, especially, is really impactful for playing multiplayer because it's really fun if you're all in the same room or you're all in the same chat to be reacting to the same story at the same moment. And text to speech really helps that happen and makes the multiplayer experience a lot more fun.
Agreed. Yeah, it's really fun. Cool. These have been some great questions. Thanks to all of you for joining. Thanks, Nick, for coming in. Hopefully, this answers a bunch of the questions that we have about Voyage. We're really excited to share it with you. Hopefully, we'll start being able to share things more publicly soon. We I guess the way of saying this is I think we're all aware of how much excitement and demand and enthusiasm there is for this. No one's more excited than we are. And as soon as it will help us to accelerate the work by sharing it with you, we will. So we're looking forward to that. We'll just kind of call out on Thursday. We have another kind of another live stream where we're going to do another AI Dungeon play with Kobe, who joined last week, and then we'll set our schedule for next week's live stream. But thanks again for everyone for joining. Thank you, Nick, for coming and answering questions the community had about Voyage, and we'll see all of you later.